All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Edge of the Earth podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Jarman. Today I'm joined by a special guest. We've had him on once prior to this, John of the Fright Corner podcast, which is now available on Spreaker.com. John, can you tell people how to get to your podcast and just really quickly what it's about?
Yeah, sure. Go to Spreaker, look up the Fright Corner. It's right there. Should be the only one on there. I'm a horror movie podcast. That's the main thing is movies, but I try to cover a little bit of everything. This first episode is just an introduction to get you introduced and kind of go over what I'd like to get out of the podcast and stuff. And so, I've got links there to the Facebook page and also the Twitter for the Fright Corner.
All right, cool. And we'll also post links in the description of this episode just to make sure people can get there. And also you can go to the frightcorner.tk and it will take you directly to the website, which is, it's also part of the larger collection of all the videos and Jeff Jarman Show stuff and all that. So it's all right there in one place. Definitely check out that podcast. I highly recommend it. And today we're going to be talking about the shadow people. So I don't know if we briefly touched on this one the last time you were here. I think we might have mentioned it at least.
I think we mentioned it just in brief, just kind of said it and went on.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about what they really are, what we think they are anyway, because no one knows for sure, but at least we have a general idea of the possibilities of what they could be. But at the end of the day, you know, ghosts are ghosts, and we don't really know what they are for sure 100% just yet. So, John, let's start with you and kind of talk about what you know about the shadow people, and we'll just kind of go back and forth.
Okay, from what I know, the biggest definition is you call them shadow people, shadow person, shadow figures, or black masses. Perception, patch of shadow as a living humanoid figure is usually what they appear as. It's particularly interpreted by believers in the paranormal or supernatural as a presence of a spirit or other entities. That's the big thing that I can think about them is a lot of people have been known to see them. One way they see them is, I believe, during sleep paralysis. They've been known to see them, perceived like a shadowy or indistinct shape in the corner, approaching them as you lie awake, you know, halfway paralyzed. That could have a lot of play on, you know, the way your mental mind is, whether there's something there or not. They can't really prove or disprove it yet. So
yeah, that's a good point. And going back real quick to the description of the shape of the creatures or the entities, like you said, just a black mass. Sometimes they'll be just like this big black thing, which I want to say that I have seen them prior to this in a hotel that I worked at in Colorado Springs. We'd had lots of reports from guests and former employees who had seen these things in the hallways. And it was never really the shape of a human. It was just always kind of a big black mass. And then if you listen to the episode prior to this where I talked about my ghost encounter, what I saw was a giant black mass in that basement when I was folding the towels or whatever in the laundry room. And most commonly, however, the shadow people are described as being humanoid, like John said, and usually wearing a black hat. I'll probably post a picture of a shadow person on the cover of this episode so you guys can kind of see the outline. It's really, that's all it is it's an outline of the shadow person and wearing the hat. So then also going back to what you said about the sleep paralysis.
Yeah, on the sleep paralysis being a big thing, as you were saying, that seems to be a pretty standard thing that people that suffer from sleep paralysis will see. Is they see a figure in the corner, usually a black figure, humanoid, or black mass, but you can't really identify what it is. As suffering from sleep paralysis a couple of times in my life, it is scary, and I don't know if there was something there or not. I thought there was, but like I said, in that emotional state, who knows? But I know that's one of the biggest ways people see him is during that sleep paralysis stage.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, when people, they say that on average, people will experience sleep paralysis at least twice in their life, usually. Some people can have it all the time. They can have it, 4 times a week even. And it's one of the most horrifying experiences you can possibly go through. Like, you wake up and you're completely paralyzed, cannot move anything. All you can do is kind of move your eyes around, and you can maybe like make some grunting noises or moaning noises out of your mouth, trying to, get somebody's attention or find someone to help you. But that is your natural fight or flight reaction, where you feel like there's something in the room with you and you can't see it. So that's a good point about, is it actually there, or is this just your brain, freaking out and trying to overcompensate for what's happening at that moment? Plus you're groggy, you're just coming out of sleep. So there's those two, and then the old hag syndrome is also something that accompanies this. And if you haven't heard of the old hag, it's this thing where you wake up out of a dead sleep and you kind of have a really heavy feeling on your chest. You feel like something's sitting on your chest, and some people actually go as far as to say they see an old woman or an old witch-looking type thing sitting on their chest, and sometimes the entity will be laughing at them, or sometimes it'll even go as far as to choke them out, like, put its hands around your neck and choke you. John, I'm sure your experiences weren't quite that violent, but you did feel like there was something there, right?
Oh, yeah, I felt like something was there. I felt like a weight, like I couldn't physically make myself sit up, even though my mind was trying to tell me I need to sit up and see, is there somebody in the room? But I couldn't overcome that, and I can't be sure. I mean, it felt like there was a weight on my chest, but I didn't feel no suffocation or nothing. It just felt like I couldn't project myself to get up, even though I knew I needed to wake up and get moving. It's a real odd experience. It's pretty terrifying, too.
Yeah, and just to get, this is kind of off subject, I mean, it's kind of not, but just to give people an idea, some of the key factors that can cause sleep paralysis is when you sleep on your back all the time. Sleeping on your back puts you more at risk. Also, having a lot of anxiety can do it, and also irregular sleep patterns. Like if you sleep during the day, then all of a sudden you sleep at night, then you go back to sleeping during the day, and then you sleep during the day again, the night. You get the idea. So some of those things are things you can try to avoid having this sleep paralysis. But then again, if you want to experiment and maybe see if you can summon a shadow person, go right ahead and tell us about it. But I wouldn't recommend it personally. But so there's that. Is it real or is it not in that case? But then again, there have been other times where people have seen shadow people. It can happen anytime. I mean, I've heard stories of people seeing shadow people walking through the woods in the middle of the day. And I've seen, I was talking about in the hotel, that was, 5 o'clock in the afternoon or evening, in the middle of broad daylight practically, or at least, the dim light of the hotel. So really it can be anywhere.
Oh, yeah, it can be anywhere at any time. Like you said, I mean, there's been reports of them in broad daylight, in their homes, at other locations, in the woods. So it's not just a simple shadow. There's a distinct way you can see a shadow move if it's projected from somebody or something. But what people are describing is they're seeing this shadow-like person or mass moving independently.
Right, and usually they describe it as being darker than dark, right, or blacker than black.
Yes, I mean just like absent of all color.
Yeah, like if you looked into a dark room, you could see it in the dark room, if that makes sense. So then going back to where you could see them, a lot of people sometimes, you might have heard of Art Bell, the famous radio personality, overnight host, Coast to Coast AM formerly, and now Midnight in the Desert occasionally. He actually saw a shadow person. He was actually doing research for his latest foray for Midnight in the Desert. He was doing research late at night for quite a few hours, preparing for this show. And he was actually looking at the computer monitor for a long time, and then all of a sudden he saw something kind of manifest over to his right. And then he actually turned and he looked at it, and it was just this black shadow person just staring at him. I don't think it had the hat that people talk about. I don't remember for sure, but he looked at it, and then it like moved, and it was behind him all of a sudden, and then it was on his left. And he said that was one of the most frightening experiences he's ever had. And one of his theories is that maybe staring at a computer monitor for long periods of time and seeing the resolution and all these, because screens are a series of flashing lights and flickering lights, and your eyes have to adjust to see that, and after a while, after you see that for so often, maybe that changes the perception around you. Maybe you're able to see temporarily things in normal life that you wouldn't be able to see. John, what do you think about that kind of theory?
Well, there's some validity to it. I mean, because you have to refocus on all that stuff, as you said, and I mean it takes time. But
And also,
I think there's some good points there. I mean, I really do think there's something there that could be further researched. Anyway.
yeah, I don't know if we fully understand the mechanics of the human eye to begin with, anyway. So this is all just speculation. Maybe it's not accurate, but so then also it's not just the computer monitors. I mean, people see this without it all the time. That's just one aspect of it. But people have seen shadow people for hundreds of years, maybe even longer than that, maybe thousands. I don't know. But now I think we'll move into more what they could be. And so the first possibility is ghosts. John, how close do they act to ghosts? Are they violent? Are they pacifist? Are they just observers? That's what I hear most often, is that they're just observing.
That's what I've heard a lot of. A lot of them have said that they've not actually physically had interaction, but they just are there. There's no interaction. There's no disembodied voice or anything. No acts of violence or anything. They're just pretty observant. The ones that describe like seeing the shadow and then violently attacking, that could be something else, I think. That could be something more malevolent than a shadow person. A shadow person could be a spirit. It could be a massive energy. We don't know, because the body works on so many different levels and so much chemical and stuff that, maybe it is some kind of imprint left from us, or, like I said, it just could be energy from, as we talked about, with electromagnetic disturbances and stuff. That could be part of it. But for the most part, anybody that sees it, what I've heard from them is it's just an observer. Not really physically attacking or rushing you or scaring you, but it's just there and then it's gone.
Right. Yeah. I almost never hear of the shadow people being malevolent. I've heard a few cases where they described it as malevolent and they described it as a shadow person, but that's just them probably mislabeling what they were actually dealing with. Because, like you said, most all shadow people are just observers, and that's why a lot of people think, well, not necessarily a lot. So I was listening to a guy talking about this in research for this episode, and he was talking about how his higher way of thinking can open up your mind to all of this stuff, and it was kind of like this cultish type thing, like a higher thinking, woo-woo stuff. But anyway, he was saying that he thinks the shadow people are time travelers, and maybe the hat that they wear is some sort of device that allows them to travel through time and just observe without actually interacting and without disturbing the space-time continuum and all that stuff. How much validity do you give to that idea?
I don't give any to that idea. I think that's just a little too, as you said, woo-woo for me to think that, oh, there's higher intelligent people traveling back in time.
And the hat is their device.
Yeah, and the hat's their device. That's a little far-fetched for me. I mean, maybe it is, but they got to prove it a little bit harder than that to me, other than just saying, well, that's probably what it is. Well, you got to present me with something more proof than just saying, well, I'm pretty sure this is what it is. Right. I mean, there's no proof to it, and that's what really doesn't hold up. When you look at, try to look at things objectively, he's presenting this, but yet he has no evidence to it. So, his observation of it is just the same as somebody that says it's malevolent.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't really prove it unless you can physically prove it.
Now, I've heard some cases where people talk about a chill being, brought into the room, or the room got colder when the shadow people were there, and that is characteristic with a ghost or some sort of paranormal entity. So there is that aspect to it that I forgot to mention earlier. But as for the time traveler idea, it's kind of on the fence, more likely not. And then the next one would be possibly aliens. I don't necessarily buy into this one either, but a lot of abductees say that they were abducted during sleep paralysis or an event similar to that. And also sometimes they move in quickly like a shadow, and they can take them, or maybe that's all they can see sometimes. What do you think about the alien idea?
I don't see that being right. I mean, in my opinion, I think that one's just maybe even a little bit more far-fetched than the time traveling.
Yeah.
I mean, some people talk about that, but, I don't know. I mean, I'm not object to think that there is more intelligent life out there, but if
Right.
if they got that much technology, if they've traveled through space and time and all that, I don't think they'd waste time trying to be a shadow to come in and steal you in the night.
Hmm. Yeah,
I
and
think they got better ways to do it.
exactly, yeah. I'm a firm believer that aliens do exist and are currently visiting this planet, but I don't believe that they tie into the shadow people thing. It's kind of like the great alien deception with like they talk about how aliens could be demons. I don't buy into that one either. Just because, well, I mean, for one, I think most people know by now. I don't really buy into the Bible's rhetoric of, well, anything really, and
Anything.
uh, so I don't think that aliens are trying to mislead us or anything like that. I think, well, they could be trying to mislead us. Hey, we're your friends, and eventually we're going to take you over and make you our slaves. That kind of thing. But one of the other possibilities would be, okay, so I've kind of touched on the interdimensional type theory before in the past. I think maybe in the time travel episode, where we could have parallel dimensions happening at the same time. So shadow people could be like a crossover type thing, where maybe someone from this other dimension are kind of peeking into ours, or they're just crossing over just barely enough, to where they get that shadow outline or that little bit of existence in our timeline. What do you think about that one?
I'd be open to the idea that maybe there are parallel dimensions that we don't know about. And maybe, that is a possibility. Like I said, most people see them as observers. That holds a little bit, to me, from everything that we've talked about. I think that would hold more water than the time traveling or than being aliens.
Yeah, for sure.
Or associated with the demon type idea. I don't go with that either, but I think between the ones we've looked at, that could be a good possibility for another explanation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible. It's not impossible, but it hasn't been proved fact, and it ain't been proved false either, really. So,
Yeah, it's almost talking about like existing on other planes, or the vibrations, that kind of thing. Science is actually beginning to look at reality like on a quantum level in the same way. That particles of the smallest size exist on vibrations. Perhaps those vibrations of our existence are beginning to mesh with those of another dimension, or something like that. It could account for the increase in ghostly phenomena and the shadow people and all that. But then again, we don't know for sure that they're actually increasing in number. I mean, there are more people on the Earth now than ever before, so in theory there would be more dead people or more ghosts in existence than ever before. So I don't know. It's all speculative, really.
okay, well, I have to throw in my 2 cents here on what else it could be for some people. I mean, it is something that needs to be touched on, and a lot of people that report the shadow are meth addicts that have been up on a binge for several days, and they will say they've seen shadow people, shadow cars, dogs, just anything. So we have to look at them and say, did you really see a shadow person, entity, or was it the fact that you've spent the last 4 days high on meth?
Exactly. Sleep
Because
deprivation and hallucinations.
yeah, exactly. Being deprived of sleep is almost worse on you than anything. I mean, of course, we'll get into my podcast a little bit. Nightmare on Elm Street, that's where Wes Craven got his idea from, was he read a story in Taiwan about kids staying up for so long that they actually died from sleep deprivation.
Wow, that's crazy.
Their bodies gave out. Their hearts and everything just gave out and died.
Huh. So yeah, that's definitely a possibility. I think a lot of people who are more grounded in, their regular day-to-day lives and don't really look at the paranormal very often, that's probably what they chalk it up to. They probably don't put a whole lot more credence to it. But then again, you have to look at the people who are not meth addicts, who don't do this. Police officers
Exactly.
who have seen this. High-ranking businessmen, credible people who have stuff on the line. And I didn't make up my sighting. And if it was a shadow person, that's definitely relevant. So I don't know. I mean, it's just got to be kind of a case-by-case basis, and I think that's what a lot of the paranormal comes down to is you have to know who to trust because there's so many hoaxers out there. But like they always said about crop circles, it only takes one to be real.
That's right. It just takes one. And you can say that for a lot of stuff. You just need that one piece of evidence. And there's things that if somebody present me one piece of solid proof, I would change my opinion on things.
Yeah.
But
I think that's the best way to look at the world. If you're really trying to find out what the truth is about these things, because people have their own agendas and they make up things, and everybody has a motive, So, on that note, not to end on a downer, but there is a lot out there, and that's why we do what we do. So, yeah, John, thanks again for being on the podcast. Let's remind everyone once again, there are links in the description, but the Fright Corner podcast, it is on thefrightcorner.tk, and also you can find it on Spreaker, correct?
Yes, on Spreaker, and then on Twitter at the Fright Corner, and look up the Facebook page, the Fright Corner, and that should be everywhere to reach me at anyway.
Awesome, and we're going to continue to grow. I'm Jeff Jarman. Once again, you can find me on Twitter at JeffJarman55. You can find my website, jeffjarman.tk. Everything is there. Also, this podcast, edgeoftheearth.tk, goes to the same place, really. We're on Stitcher, we're on iTunes, we're on Spreaker, maybe on iHeartRadio. Maybe, guys, if you are listening, iHeartRadio, please. Yeah, so, all right, John, thanks for being on the podcast, and we'll see everyone next time right here at the Edge of the Earth.